This week on To the Contrary.
First, men using more flex time and loving it. Then, conservatives woo the women's vote. Behind the headlines, what do millennial women want?
I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, flex time.
Are dads the new moms? Well, no, but there's some new research showing men are using more flex time than we would have thought. A new report by the Working Mother Research Institute shows nearly 8 out of 10 men say they have flexible work schedules, and nearly the same amount say they feel somewhat or very comfortable using flex time. This does not mean men are doing half the house or childcare. Labor Department figures show on a typical day last year, almost half of women did housework, versus fewer than 1 in 5 men. And in households with young children, women spent an hour each day caring for them, while men spent an average of 26 minutes. When it comes to parental leave, another report this year shows the majority of fathers take only about 1 day of leave time to bond with their new children for every month the typical mother takes.
So, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeever, is men now using flex time going to be a good thing for women?
Well, I certainly think that anything that allows for greater work-family balance for both men and women is a good thing.
Speaking of work-family balance, I think corporations are going to wise up to this. I mean, corporations are people too, and they understand their people, and so I think they're going to do more for women.
I do think that it's going to help women be able to take that time because corporations will understand the work-life balance.
And I think it's great for us as women to welcome men to this conversation. Earlier this year, Max Schirison, who is the CEO of a big tech company, publicly stepped down as being CEO because he said he wanted more time with his 3 kids and his wife had been shouldering too much. So I think as women, we need to make sure that we welcome men to this work-life balance conversation.
Is it changing? It's flex time and men adopting it, changing it from a woman's issue to just an issue, a workplace issue?
I think that it's going to change it from a women's issue. I think that it's great that men are taking flex time, but women are still looked at negatively when they leave work early. When men leave work, you're a good dad. Good for you picking up your child. If a woman leaves work and she has children, then it's like, oh, she's slacking on the job. And that's still the reality for many women in the workplace.
Agreed?
It's going to take time. I agree with that, actually. It'll take time to change that mentality, the culture that's out there in the society that we have, that women are kind of sort of shamed for it, leaving work early to go take care of the kids, you know?
But let's remember, I think companies are offering more flex time options for men and women, and they're offering a lot of options to try to attract and retain good employees. And so we saw earlier this year that Apple and Facebook came out that now they're going to offer the benefit of freezing eggs to keep good, female talent. So I think this is another example of, private sector companies trying to allow more flexibility so that they can attract and retain good employees.
I wish the data had shown whether when men take flex time they use it for family, for childcare and housecare, or they use it to go play golf, versus how women, and I'm sure there are a lot of women who take flex time who use it for their hobbies as if they don't have kids or whatever. But do you think there's a difference there?
I definitely think it's a difference. I do think that when women use their flex time, they tend to use it to help them better balance work and family. But men kind of have more freedom in terms of how they use their time, and we have to hold men accountable for that. If you have,
how do you do that?
Well, I do it by choosing who I choose to spend my life with. Frankly,
right.
I mean, if you don't respect me enough to know that when we're in the household and both of us are working, that we both have certain duties to do to maintain this household, then you don't deserve my time.
And that's very brave, because there are a lot of women who will have, get married, have a child, whatever, and say, I can't convince him to do housework. I can't convince him to cook. So it's only fair that you use your power as a woman in a relationship to make those choices.
Well, and I've seen one good study on this by Stephen Rhodes, a professor at the University of Virginia. He wrote a book called Taking Sex Differences Seriously. And he studied what men versus women in academia did when they took paternity or maternity leave. And it found that men often published a lot more after taking paternity leave. So you see that they're using that differently. So it leads to questions about what do these family leave policies do and how do they impact people at the workplace?
I think it matters that it has to come from the top down. If you offer people flex leave, but then look down on them when they take flex leave, or you as a boss don't take flex leave, whether you're a man or a woman, then that trickles down into the workplace. And so I think that the idea, if you're leaving on paternity leave, you should be taking care of your children, right? I don't want to see.
But there's no way to police that.
I don't want you to see you publishing things. But I think that it's a culture that you need to create in the workplace that says that this is your time to bond with your newborn, to bond with your adoptive child that might have come into the family. Like, this is your time to be with your family. We don't have any expectations that you're going to be doing anything other than that. Enjoy this time.
But that has to come from the home. I don't think any amount of sensitivity training or training in the workplace could get men to wise up and realize their role at home and that gender roles are changing. I think it has to start with the woman saying, hey, look, I think you ought to help out at home. You're getting this leave from work. Let's do this together.
Well, and we see men lagging in terms of taking paternity leave versus women taking maternity leave. How long till that gap closes? Any ideas?
It's going to be a long time, but I think really we are lagging behind, just generally speaking, as a country as it relates to the rest of the world when it comes to maternity leave. I was just at a conference about a couple of weeks ago in Germany, speaking with women from around the world. They were shocked to find out, of course, that America, we have absolutely no guaranteed paid maternity leave. Shocked. I'm in there with women who come from countries where they have 3 years of paid leave. And so,
Really? What country is that?
That was Sweden. And so, it is amazing to see that we lag behind the rest of the world, and what they're pushing for now, places like Sweden, places like Germany, they're pushing for now gender neutral leave, because they're saying what happens at the end of the day is that it's the women that are taking the maternity leave, and that men need to take participation in terms of raising their children when they're small as well.
Did you find out at this conference? Because I have heard that there are some leading European countries who are requiring men to take paternity leave.
They are trying to push that through several parliaments at the moment. Exactly.
Interesting. And will this affect the gender gap in pay?
Well, that is a bigger topic that we can discuss. But I want to jump in on the policy question, which is here, should the government be mandating more, paid leave for men and women? And I think we just have to be careful right now when the economy is still, struggling, is do we want more government regulation on the economy? I think we should be careful about more regulation there and really encourage these businesses to hire people and not put more constraints on businesses.
Well, if we want to do more than just talk about really caring about families, we want to put our money where our mouths are. And if we really want to make sure that we create environments where we can provide children the opportunity to grow up with the best opportunities to be the best that they can be in life, we need to support families with the financial base that they need to be able to be there when their children need them most.
But Americans are addicted to work. We rank lowest in people taking paid leave that's available for vacation. Our country is low on that list, and I think that's really
it's not looked on positively. Right. If we take leave, that is shown as that we are not strong workers. And the very idea that countries that have wonderful economies, that are prospering and doing well, provide all of this leave for women, for men to be in the workplace, just shows you that it does work. We just want to hold on to our ideals that, we can't do that because it's going to be intervening in people's private lives, and government shouldn't do that. Really? Because they intervene in a whole lot of other ways that are negative. This one is actually saying, we care about families, we care about you. And when people feel cared about, they work harder. And that's the reality, and many studies have shown that.
All right, that'll give you something to think about, and please let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Hervé or at To The Contrary. From the new dad to the new conservative politics.
Republicans claim the so-called war on women is over, and female voters realize Republican candidates aren't waging war on them. But as we get close to Election Day, a TV war for women voters has erupted in proportions never before witnessed. Even conservative stalwart, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, is claiming to be a women's rights advocate as he stumps for women's votes. McConnell, who's also Senate Minority Leader, is not seen by most political analysts as a hero of the women's movement. He's in danger of losing his Senate seat to Allison Lundergan Grimes, Kentucky's Secretary of State. A recent poll showed his lead tightening from 2 points to 1 point. Hence, this rather unusual pitch on the part of a conservative Republican and his Democratic opponent's response.
Allison Lundergan Grimes wants me to think that I'm not good enough.
That I couldn't get a job unless Washington passed more laws.
That I can't graduate college without raising your taxes.
She wants me to believe that strong women and strong values are incompatible.
She thinks I'll vote for the candidate who looks like me,
rather than the one who represents me.
As a strong Kentucky woman, I'm voting for Mitch McConnell.
I'm voting for Mitch McConnell.
Because he believes in me and he works for us.
I'm Mitch McConnell, and I approve this message.
I'm Allison Lundergan-Grimes, and this is Eileen Woods from Lynch, Kentucky. Here's her question for Senator McConnell.
Senator, why did you vote 2 times against the Violence Against Women Act and against enforcing equal pay for women?
I can never get him to answer this one either. I approve this message because, Senator, you must be forgetting that over half the voters in Kentucky are women like Eileen.
Do you see this as I see this, which is historic? I about fell through the floor when I saw Mitch McConnell running an ad wooing women voters.
I think it's beautiful. Why not? Why shouldn't he? Like they said in the ad, you know, they're counting, Allison is counting on these women to vote for them because she's a woman. And I think that's sort of despicable. I mean, she's run into a lot of trouble. She's a flawed candidate from the start. If you ask me, she wouldn't answer whether she voted for President Obama or not. She understands that Kentucky women still find a problem with this administration. And so I applaud Mitch for pulling out all the stops on this. And I also think the war on women is over.
That's funny. If the war on women was over, then we would have pay equity right now. Why is it? That's a very good question. Why has Mitch McConnell, and frankly, most Republicans,
a whole lot of, not just Republicans, mainstream Republicans have wooed women's votes before.
Oh, yeah.
But I've not seen an election ever, and I've covered every one since '76, where there are ads by, you know, stalwart conservatives trying to get the women's vote, which traditionally goes Democratic.
Because they're scared to death. Mitch McConnell should not be running for his life right now. He should not have, as a stalwart of the Senate, should not be within a point reach of a Democratic candidate in Kentucky. And it's because, frankly, I want to say the people in Kentucky are probably sick and tired of Mitch McConnell, that having a plan to take down the president is actually not a plan for the country. And that's the reality. And I think that his ad is almost like a spoof to me. It's as comedic. When you say, oh, Mitch McConnell cares about women, Mitch McConnell has voted against every measure that would actually matter to women. Violence Against Women Act, pay equity, leave for women. Mitch McConnell doesn't care about women. He cares about getting votes. And he only wants to talk about women when it's an election time. Out of an election, where are his policies that actually help us?
Will this draw women to the polls? And of course, and you know, we might want to make note of the fact that all the women in the ad were white. Will it? And that's the vote he needs, the white married women's vote, and that traditionally goes Republican.
Well, what's interesting here is you lift off all those issues, but in a recent poll that came out of Kentucky, the #1 issue for Kentucky voters, both male and female, is jobs and the economy. So we can't lose sight of that. And also, when you talk about him trying to reach women, he's been working on it throughout the campaign, and that's why he was actually ahead with women at one point. He's got a great surrogacy program. He also has 54% of his staff is women. He has one of the highest percentages in Washington, D.C. And a lot of these issues are more complicated than I think we're making them seem, like the pay equity issue. I think Mitch McConnell, as a Republican...
How is we're talking about jobs and we're talking about the economy. And in order to have a strong economy, people need to have jobs and people need to be paid what they're worth. And women aren't paid what they're worth and haven't been. And when you look at women of color and then add in sexual orientation and gender identity, the cents keep falling off the table. So how is that not...
So do you buy into the 77 cent? Is that
do I buy into it?
Yes.
I believe numbers. Numbers are real. And so that's real. I do buy in. Actually, he's really great with PR. He has a great PR campaign. I will definitely give him that. But when it comes to facts, the facts are not there to really lift up what he's saying. When you put the rubber to the road, he's not there as it relates to specific issues that women need. And when you talk about the economy, we've had 55 straight months of job growth in this country. We've created 10 million jobs under this administration, despite everything that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans have done to stop any sort of push by this president to even expand that number. That compares great compared to the previous president. Let's not even go there. When this president came into office, we were literally hemorrhaging jobs. We have turned that around.
I do want to get, before we run out of time, I want to get into the historicity, if you will, of this election and the fact that conservatives are now campaigning hard for the women's vote. Is this the year when the women's vote has mattered more than ever before?
Because last year, March of 2013, the RNC issued, or released rather, their Growth and Opportunity Project, the finding that was basically an autopsy report of what went wrong in 2012, and that has made a number of candidates wise up across the country. The Democratic...
And how was the women's vote part of that?
Absolutely.
Was an effort to appeal to lower income women and women of color, which traditionally go Democrat. Was that part of it?
That was absolutely a part, and of course it was, because there's $10 million outreach program that the RNC has now because of those very issues. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of candidates as we get closer. We're very close to Election Day now. Wise up and show. And I want to point out Steve Daines in Montana running for Senate. He voted for the Violence Against Women Act, and he's got ads out right now, and I encourage people to look them up because they're really great. Kentucky is Kentucky. The South is the South. But what's happening across the country is the tide is turning with Republicans. Candidates are becoming wiser, and they know what's wrong with this party.
Will it work?
You know, I hope that people sort of get past the facade and get past the cute little commercials and really look at people's records. If women would take the opportunity to look at the records of those people who are running, they would know whether or not really if that candidate is for them.
The Steve Daines commercial was on his record, though. There are Republican
We're talking about Mitch McConnell. We're talking about Mitch McConnell.
That's different. That's Kentucky.
But in general, in terms of all candidates, it really is important for us to look at their record, not just the month before it's time to pull the lever, or it's important to see, have these people been on our side?
All right, behind the headlines. Both parties say young unmarried women will be crucial in deciding many close races. We spoke with two young female strategists, one from each party, to hear what they would be doing to woo this critical voting bloc.
Republicans have long-standing problems with young women voters, but this year so do Democrats. Their problem is getting young, unmarried women to the polls. They have voted Democratic by a wide margin for several years. Since 2004, Democrats running for Congress have won almost two-thirds of their vote. Barack Obama did well with them in 2008 and 2012. To hold the Senate, Democrats will need them again this year. While all Americans are less likely to vote during midterm elections, the drop-off is steepest for single women.
They tend to vote in presidential election years. Democratic Party and political parties in general have been sort of working to get them to turn out in midterms. I think this will be a year where they do that because so many issues that affect them are very big key issues circulating right now. With that happening, both parties are beefing up their efforts to reach out to young women to turn them out to the polls.
According to Democratic strategist Atima O'Mara, those issues include pay discrimination, the minimum wage, and contraception. A Democratic cynic might say Republicans wish these young women simply stayed home on Election Day, but according to Republican strategist Chelsea Henry, the GOP does want young single women turning out and voting for her party.
After the 2012 elections, and it was our second time losing to President Obama, our eyes were wide open to the fact that something needed to be done differently. And it's not that our message needs to be changed, it's how we message it to these different areas.
Republicans are hopeful that lingering dissatisfaction with President Obama will discourage young women from voting Democratic. Henry says the economy is particularly harsh for women and the president is at fault.
The current administration and their principles have only worsened what we've seen among women. You have more young women who went into poverty under President Obama. You have more young women who were not receiving the pay that they deserve. You have more young women who have not seen pay increases in several years. These are the things that matter to women.
The administration has done as good a job as it can in dealing with sort of the economy and has really tried to be aggressive in pushing forward jobs initiatives and the stimulus when the economy was at its worst. In college affordability. If anything, they're at a stalemate with Congress, and so the president has been left to sort of push executive orders.
O'Mara says the Democrats' main problem is not the president, but frustration with the entire political process.
They're turned off by the political process and the parties arguing, and so we certainly as young Dems are very aware of that. Certainly we're not happy with how the political process has been proceeding because it doesn't benefit young people overall. So we really talk about the issues. That's what young people care about. That's what excites them. That's what we all care about.
Republicans, meanwhile, want to shake off the perception that they are not for young women.
The face of the party has been older Caucasian males, yet the truth of the matter is that is not what defines the Republican Party. What's most important is the economy. Young women are not only thinking about now, but they're thinking about the fact that one day they may have children, one day they may be married.
Not only do they want them as voters, both parties want young women candidates. But while women run for office now more than ever, a significant gap persists. According to a recent study, nearly half of high school boys think about running for office, compared with about 1/3 of high school girls.
We've had training programs specifically just for our members, young women especially, who want to get more involved in the political process and how to do that.
The Republican Party is very diverse for many different demographics. And so as they outreach to young women, it's important for them and for us to continue to propel and push and empower young women. And I can tell you that's what the RNC has been doing.
Now, you've been organizing it for Republicans at college campuses across the country. The most important thing, let's not forget, is to get millennials out to vote. They did vote in prior elections, in the presidential elections, but not in off-year elections. What's going to make them vote if they vote this year?
Bonnie, you're right. Young, single women are a key constituency for the left, and I think we're seeing an enthusiasm gap here where they're just not as excited as they were before. And if those women don't turn out to vote, it's going to have major consequences and could flip the Senate. But I will say it is an uphill battle on these college campuses, and that's one of the challenges on the right, is there's so many forces on the left that are really reaching these women. I was at the University of Virginia 2 weeks ago speaking, making the case for conservative policies, and the Cavalier Daily, the student newspaper there, misquoted me changing the word conservative for right wing. Just that, I thought it was important for young people to hear conservative views, and they just changed that. So you see those challenges I think the right has is there's so many institutional forces reaching young people that it's a real uphill battle.
But let me ask you this. I mean, it's always been a split. The Democrats tend to get somewhere between 10 and 20% more women voters. Republicans, since Bush, since Reagan, have always had the highest income demographic of women, which is white married women. But the Democratic women are also 10 to 20% more likely to need government services because they are poor. Is there any way to get those women to vote for a party that doesn't want to give them those services, that wants to cut taxes as opposed to increase spending?
It's not only do I think that that's unlikely, but I also think it's very interesting that the Republican Party has specifically been putting out messages. You look at what's going on in Fox News, you look at what some candidates are saying, what some individual political strategists are saying, and they're specifically telling young women not to vote, which is amazing to me. I mean,
really?
Yes.
Well, Republican and Fox are different. They're not the same thing.
Well, it pretty much is the same thing. Come on, let's get real about that. And so it seems to be right in the same vein as the sort of voter ID strategy. It seems as if, to me, the entire Republican strategy is to reduce the number of people who will actually vote against you, make it more difficult or discourage them to vote. Therefore, you will win based on who actually is able to navigate the path to make it to the polls. Instead of convincing people, you want to weed out the electorate to only include those that would vote for you in the first place.
I disagree with that point. I disagree even more so with Atima's point, saying that people don't have a problem with this president. I think that's the biggest issue this upcoming election. We have 3 issues on the ballot: Ebola, ISIS, and the economy. And those are 3 areas.
What do you mean we have 3 issues?
Well,
on the
if you look
ballot?
at these are the 3 issues that are front of mind for the average voter when we're coming to the ballot. And I'll tell you, this president, lack of leadership, failure of leadership in all 3 areas. And I think that hits all women, not just young women.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not?
Because one, there have been, 3 cases of Ebola in the United States.
It's in New York City now.
And it's one person. And every person that has... see, this is the kind of fear-mongering that really starts to bother me, especially about Ebola in particular, because there are whole countries in Africa that have 4,200 people that are infected, that are dying, that don't have the resources, but our self-absorbed space that we occupy is calling Ebola an issue for the election? It isn't. And ISIS, the second part of that is the fact that we have actually been, and we as America, not just the president on his own, which is what I think that conservatives, Republicans, right wing, whatever the name is, don't back up this president at all. even in the face of like massive foreign issues like
seconds to respond.
I mean, I have to tell you, this president, I mean, why did he put the full weight behind New York City, saying, I will give you whatever, you know, resources you need, monies you need to help this one patient? It's in our borders. These are national. These are. I'll tell you
what. You wanted federal government assistance, isn't that your?
Of course not. But why is your president saying that? I mean, he's my president too. But I'll tell you, it's national security issues. It's healthcare. It worries everyone.
And we're out of time. That's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/to the contrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.